Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Boundary Breakers. We are well into this series now, and we thank everybody for coming back and seeing our episodes. We wish everyone out there a happy Pride Month. It's a great time of the year for expressing ourselves, and it's a perfect time for our topic today, which is the battle of inclusivity, how to build safe spaces for every child in every classroom. And boy, do we have something cooked up for you today. So, we are here with the lovely Teri Westerby, who is a passionate advocate for social change and inclusion, a trustee, school district board member, and we're going to delve into this crucial topic. Teri, would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Oh, just a little? Okay. Well, I'm Mr. Terry. My pronouns are he and him. I've been a trustee in the Chilliwack School District for the last 2 years, and we've got 2 years left in the term. So it's just been an amazing journey of learning all about what makes schools work and operate and what makes people tick. I absolutely love it, and it's been a journey to get me there. Starting from grassroots community advocacy, hearing from people, knowing what it is that I can do to make change, and having the opportunity to do it has just been so rewarding. And I'm incredibly grateful to the Chilliwack community for giving me this opportunity to lead because it's been just so rewarding, and seeing the difference that is made in this community has been just makes my heart sing.
Mhm. Yeah, it is a total representation of the growth that we are going through as a modern society. I'm so glad that, people are really starting to care more about the piece of inclusivity because it is something that everyone should feel a part of and, feel okay and at home in the world that we're living in.
Exactly.
So I wanted to exhibit a little bit of the work you're doing. So would you be able to tell the audience a little bit about the Love is Louder event that's going to be happening in July, right?
That the Love is Louder event was last year.
Hmm.
It was in response to some people who are hosting soji um, anti-soji kind of gatherings, and they were trying to educate each other on the messaging of why they don't want inclusivity in schools, and this kind of thing stirs up um, a lot of pain in members of the LGBTQ community who just want to exist. Like we just want to be left alone to be who we are, and there are people gathering trying to figure out how to push us back out of the community. And so, what I wanted to do is give the LGBTQ community and the allies a space to go and to put their energy into a positive community environment rather than wondering whether they should show up and protest outside of the anti-soji rally, whether or not they should. Um, it's just painful to be alone when there are people out there who don't want to be near you. So what that gathering did was give people an opportunity to come together to see what joy looks like, what community looks like when we're together, and we crafted some really awesome opportunities for people to speak their truths. One of them being there was like a quilt. Each person got a little square and they could write fabric. What did pride mean to them? What did it mean to be a part of the community? And we ended up putting this together. And I say we, but it was actually Elise. She sewed each one of them together and made this quilt. So we have this absolutely wonderful gathering, and everybody was a little trepidatious at first, not wondering what this was going to be, wondering if there was going to be like rally, a lot of hate and anger, but it was just so wonderful to see people come together and lower their defenses, hug each other, cry together, dance together. We had Jada LaRue was there and she was singing and she brought musical instruments and the kids were singing and dancing and someone came in their fursuit and they were dancing, and just a display of what community can look like when we embrace diversity, we embrace each other and create community over our shared values, which is coming together.
I love that. And in today's day and age, and honestly, in all of history, there are always pieces that divide us when really, at the end of the day, we're all people living here at the same time. So there is no reason that we should pull each other apart for things that we really can't change about ourselves. So it's really amazing for people to be involved in community efforts like this, because you can feel that sense of camaraderie and that we are one and we are the same.
Yeah, and even though we are different, it's our difference that make us strong when we come together over our shared values. And when we want a community where every person can bring their best selves, their true selves forward, and their unique bundle of gifts can thrive and offer that to our community, we're all stronger because we all need each other.
Yeah, no, totally. And this is a very important lesson for kids to learn, because, we are going to be passing down society to the people that are younger than us. So you being involved with schools and policy making is so big and so significant. I'd like to explore a little bit more about that classroom dynamic, because I think that there's some real merit in what is going into your efforts there. So, would you be able to share some common challenges that you feel students face when feeling included or not included in the school space?
Yeah, I mean, I would be surprised if nobody out there had not experienced. So I'm sure there's everybody out there has experienced at one point in their lives feeling like they don't belong somewhere, um, whatever that may look like for them. And if you can think back to a time where you were in a space and you're like, maybe this isn't for me, or I just feel like I need to leave. I don't feel comfortable here. I don't feel like I can really engage or have a conversation. I don't feel like I can trust these people or I'm safe. If you can think of even one time where you felt that way, think about that as a kid and coming every single day to a school classroom and not knowing whether or not you matter, that anyone cares that you're there, whether or not you feel like you can truly be yourself, or if you have to hide and like change who you are and somehow that makes you broken.
Mm.
Um, Myself being neurodivergent, growing up in an environment where, I went to school I graduated in 2005. So school had been shifting since, say, my parents' generation, but it's not quite the same as it is now, where all learning styles are respected and each person's individual identity is it's supposed to be reflected in the classroom and in the learning styles. So for me, when I went to school, I felt like, oh, I'm not good at math because I don't learn on paper or however the math
Yeah.
teacher is traditionally teaching.
Mm.
So I was not very great at math, right? And so whenever I would go into a math class, I go, oh, what's the point? I feel like I'm wasting my time. And I didn't grow in my confidence because I didn't feel like my learning style mattered. I felt that I was broken and that I was the problem.
Yeah.
But after I graduated and I learned more about how my learning style works, I was able to teach myself math in a way that made sense for me.
Yeah.
So when our classroom environments reflect each individual student's their learning styles, their identities, their heritage, they don't have to question like, oh, do I have to hide this about myself to fit in here to make sure I don't get bullied or my teacher is going to respect me? Do I have to pretend like I'm someone I'm not? And when you do that, you're constantly hyper vigilant, like, oh no,
Mhm.
did I say something about my past? Did I say
Yeah.
something about my aunts and uncles? Did I say something about my culture? Or say, for example, some religious holidays that we tend to uh, celebrate for Christmas, for example. If you don't celebrate Christmas and everyone's saying, what are you doing for your Christmas plans? And you don't feel comfortable saying, I don't celebrate Christmas. So
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're extremely vigilant. You have to monitor what you say. You cannot be your full authentic self. You can't bring your full stories to the classroom. And so you're cutting yourself up into pieces
Yeah.
and you just can't learn when you're worrying
Mhm.
about what you're going to say, worrying about the clothes you're going to wear, worrying about how you're going to wear your hair, worrying about who's going to bully you today, worrying about whether the teacher's going to respect you.
Yeah.
You can't learn. You can't engage openly. You can't ask questions. You can't become your best self when you chop
Mhm.
yourself down into pieces
Yeah.
and aren't seen and respected. And
Completely.
any adult who's ever worked in any working environment where they didn't feel like they mattered,
Yeah.
that's exactly how kids feel when that happens with their peers and with the educators. But
Yeah.
thankfully, I know most educators don't want to do that. They're not doing it on purpose. Um, so I don't mean to say anybody's doing bad things on purpose, but it just kind of it's part of the social nature of how we shift and grow and change over time.
Yeah. I thought what was really significant and stood out to me was that feeling of, kids wanting to fit in and, hiding parts of themselves or not, fully expressing who they are or following what they wish because they are afraid of not being able to fit in. And that is such a sad reality for so many people
Yeah.
because people are individuals. What we are born in this world by ourselves. We have our own personality, our own thoughts, we have our own subconscious. You are not able to pull your mind in so many different spaces and be able to fit this standard because that standard doesn't actually exist. So I think that that is something that a lot of people really struggle with, and it is something that starts out in childhood and grows to be a big factor in a lot of adults' lives. And it's really hard to get rid of these sorts of feelings when you have been raised to think that standing out is wrong. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. And it's a natural human quality. We are hardwired for connection and belonging, Brene Brown. And it's innate to us. We want to belong. We must belong to a community because we cannot survive individually. We are a community species. We need community to live.
Mhm.
And so we are hardwired to find a way to belong to a community and to be kept safe and alive. We need each other, right?
Yeah.
So it's natural to feel like you need to do something to fit into the group, which
Hmm.
is why it's imperative that each and every one of us challenges ourselves in how we are trying to force others to fit into our idea. The more we as individuals say, hey, I see you and I love you the way you are, and
Hmm.
I will hope that you do the same for me, the more we can just come together authentically and really just be our best selves. Like that is
Hmm.
who doesn't want to just continue to be their best self? And the more you give others permission to be their best selves,
Yeah.
the more you're gonna have a bigger community, a bigger connection. That's not to say eliminate boundaries, let
Yeah.
anybody in your life. Shared values are really important when it comes to community.
Hmm.
Because you'll hear a lot of people say, "Oh, well, you don't tolerate my views. Why should I tolerate you?" And I'm no by no means suggesting
Yeah.
that we just tolerate everybody. What's important is that we respect everybody and we try to give each other space to be ourselves and themselves. And if that doesn't work for you, then you could just say, "You be you over there. I'll be
Yeah.
me over here. We're gonna
Hmm.
live our lives happily. We've got a big earth,
Yeah.
lots of people to have a community with."
Yeah. And that is so right that we don't all need to be able to completely be involved in each other's communities to, allow and respect everyone else to be in theirs because I like different things than you like. And the person next to me likes different things than the person on my other side. Like, we're never going to be able to completely match in that regard. But at the end of the day, if I'm respecting you and you're respecting me, we're going to be able to live collectively and work on this issue that we've been having.
Yeah, exactly. And our world is just growing and
Mhm.
changing and shifting with airplanes and all that. We have in the internet, we have a massively connected global community now, and that's shifting our way of being as a species,
Mhm.
as a planet. So it's really important that as that grows and shifts, we just give each other space to be ourselves and show each other that respect and give each other that courtesy so that we can share this world together and continue to give space for all of us to be our best selves. I mean, that's again, just that's it.
Exactly. And this is a great lesson to implement into kids' minds, so that they can grow up being comfortable with that sort of okayness and just being authentic. So, in your experience, how are some ways that educators can create and foster that sense of belonging in students from diverse backgrounds and walks of life?
Well, I mean, if anybody's experienced not belonging, I
Mhm.
hope that they have also experienced full belonging.
Mhm.
Most people feel that way, for example, in their home, or with their partners or spouses. So if you can get a sense of when you felt like you really truly belong somewhere, usually it comes up that you feel like you can just be yourself no matter what without question. You don't have to be hyper vigilant and wondering what you're going to say. And you can completely be authentic and saying about your past, about your stories, about your feelings, your thoughts. Um, so that the ability to just bring yourself to forward and ask questions and build that sense of community without any fear, that is that sense of belonging. So in order to see that, to get that, you have to know that when I come into a space,
Mhm.
it's I'm expected to be myself. I'm not expected to be someone else. The easiest way to do that is through visual cues, visual signals. Obviously, flags are a really great way of showing your support
Yeah.
for certain equity deserving groups, but also cultural reflections, days of celebration, making sure that everybody who is in that space has an opportunity to share about themselves, their background, their families. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had students who could bring in their families and they could share some of their background, their culture, their history, their heritage? Uh, it's actually really wonderful. We got to see a student come and drum and open up a ceremony for their elementary school classroom. And it literally brought tears to my eyes because knowing the history, knowing that in the past they wouldn't have been able to even do that, and now they're willing and able to share themselves, their song, their culture, their story, their history, their family, everything with their classroom.
Mm-hmm.
That brings a sense of belonging not only to the kid who's leading, but also to us other kids in the class who are saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, there's their culture, and maybe I can bring my culture without fear."
Yeah.
So being yourself is the loudest way to show other people that they can be themselves and it's safe. So just visual signals, more representation, more learning, and more community.
Beautiful answer. And I loved that example because you're so right. Seeing other people be fully and authentically living in their culture and being happy in it that's a ripple effect. Other people are going to feel that effect too. So I wanted to ask you, how do school policies and curriculum play a role in fostering that sense of inclusivity?
Yeah, it's a bit tough to connect
Hmm.
sometimes the high level governance and operations with like the day-to-day actual interactions. We like to use fancy words like politics and business and
Yeah.
networking, but at the end of the day, we're human beings and everything we do is human driven.
Yep.
So
Yep.
Um, so for me, when we create policy, you have to think things through in a human-centered way, but in such a broad scope that you have to think through almost every single potential outcome of those policies.
Mhm.
So it's important to take time and to reflect and ask questions of all the people that it will impact, because it's super easy to create policies without any concept of how it's going to impact, especially the more marginalized groups that may not have a large voice or people
Mhm.
representing them at the table to say, actually, it's going to affect me like this. So have you
Yeah.
thought of that? One of the best examples is, I would say, the menstrual equity provision, which came down from the BC government to make sure that every student and everybody who accesses any public space at all has access to free menstrual products. This is specifically because studies for a very long time have shown, and people's experience will tell you, that having periods prevent them from being able to fully participate in things like their job,
Yeah.
volunteering, their school, not only just um, access, but also stigma.
Yeah.
So having this provision kind of tackles both, so that no matter what or where you are, you can go where you need to go without the provision, without the menstrual product being a barrier.
Hmm.
But also by having them readily available in all our public spaces, we start to become more familiar with these products and familiar
Yes.
with the concept of people bleed. That's again human nature.
Yeah.
And so why I bring this up is because to my knowledge, the Chilliwack School District is one of the only districts with a trans person representing on the board, and we're also one of the only districts with um, those provisions going in male washrooms.
Yeah.
So that is a direct connection of why when we have representation in those spaces, you start to see a shift in the policy so that it reflects everybody in the school.
Yeah.
But it's also really important to note that the policy itself isn't enough.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's also how it's rolled out and the education around it. Sometimes you have to treat things a little bit delicately.
Mm-hmm.
So policies and operations, they tend to need to be working together to make sure that
Yeah.
a great policy is implemented in a soft way that works for everybody.
Yeah.
But the main point of having inclusive policies is so that when you have people on the front line, they're making the right decisions. They need to have a backbone,
Mm-hmm.
something to something to make sure that they can point to and say, this is actually the reason why I've done this. This is my job. I have to be inclusive. I have to make
Yeah.
sure. We obviously everybody wants to, but if we're only driven by desires and we don't have a process to point to say, this is what we're doing here, this is our goal, this is our shared
Mm-hmm.
collective goal and aim, we're all just kind of doing our own thing in our own way and
Yeah.
reinventing the
Yeah.
wheel over and over. So that we have to be careful about being efficient,
Mm-hmm.
but um, sometimes when you're over efficient, you tend to get lost in the process and lose that human
Yeah.
sense of human. But
Yeah.
we absolutely have to have a backbone for educators who are on the front line, who are in the face of human nature, who
Yeah.
can point to it and say, "This is it. This is why."
Mm-hmm. And educators play such a huge role in implementing this process because they are the ones that are going to be day to day with these kids. And I would spend more time with my teachers than I actually would with my parents because they worked full time and then I would go to dance after school. And I always had a insanely close relationship with all of my teachers. I just always loved talking with older people. But they play a crucial role. So, how let me rephrase. Would you be able to share some successful stories in schools of how educators were able to implement these inclusive fostering practices effectively?
Yeah, we have actually a teacher here in Chilliwack who won an award for her inclusive leadership
Hmm.
before some of the curriculum changes for Indigenous First Peoples Learning and Indigenous Peoples 12. She was one of the first to form an Indigenous focused education cohort in the school.
Hmm.
And that I opened up seeing the possibility of what it meant to have inclusive education and educational practices inside the schools.
Yeah.
And it was extremely impactful in creating an understanding of what Indigenous people in Chilliwack are going through and also the histories, the truth part of truth and reconciliation. So when we have policies that say teachers have the autonomy to build out courses that they think reflect the needs of their class, the students, and the needs of the community, we empower those educators to do what they know is right. They have years of experience in education. They have their own education themselves that brought them here. They have collaboration time. They have ongoing learning. We really need to empower them to do more inclusive education. And we have a lot of framework in the Chilliwack District and in the School Act that gives those teachers the autonomy to make sure that they do what they know is right for their class and their students. It's not just a blanket wash that every single classroom has to be the same. That would
Hmm.
actually be extremely detrimental
Yeah.
to the individuals in that class space. Because even if it's the same teacher in the same grade, you got a new class, it's a completely different class.
Yeah, exactly.
So each educator has to have the space to do what they think is right in combination with a backbone that they're not reinventing the wheel, but they're making sure that they have a classroom that reflects their students
Yeah.
and in a way that they know is right for them.
Yeah. And, speak like thinking with an open mind and an open heart, these policies are clear that they should be involved because so many kids have a lot of trauma from growing up in school and not feeling safe to be themselves. And I feel like this sense of trying to implement this change is often met with backlash from certain parents. So, I wanted to know what were some common misconceptions or concerns that parents may have regarding including these inclusive practices in school, and how can they be addressed?
I can understand not understanding.
Mhm.
um, I have a lot of privilege to be directly taught the information that I need to know about what's going on in the school system, the education, the curriculum, the policies, the School Act, and so on. And even though in through my lived experience, I was able to educate myself on the importance of inclusion and the importance of supporting diversity. Um, if it wasn't for my like the privilege of being taught directly and given the space to learn, there's no way I would know half the stuff that I know. Um,
Exactly.
and I can't imagine. Again, I only graduated in 2005, so it wasn't that long ago. But the difference between what kids are learning today and what I learned
Insane. Insane. Yeah.
is massive. So how could parents today, and I'm old enough to have a kid in like grade middle school, somewhere in middle school. So, you know, if I have a lot of empathy for parents who are just lost and confused and wondering what is going on in schools. It's nothing like when I was a kid. I'm not getting education. I'm not getting, the communication and understanding. So I totally and completely appreciate not knowing and even a bit of not trusting, especially if your experience in the past hasn't been great. Like what is my kid going on in school, and I'm worried about how it might be like my negative experience, and I
Yeah.
want to make sure my kid gets the best education. So I absolutely appreciate every parent who cares deeply about making sure their kid gets the best outcomes and the best experience. And I think that they should be more empowered and more educated and given more opportunity for support so that they can really engage their kids in school and help them become even better rather than resisting and pulling back and being like, oh, I'm not so sure if public school is the best space for you because I don't understand it and I'm afraid. And again, that's a natural fear to be
Mhm.
afraid of things you don't necessarily understand.
Yeah.
And when there's distrust, you have to build more trust. You can't keep building bridges and walls. Sorry, you can't keep building walls. You have to build bridges.
Yeah.
And I know that we have limited resources
Mhm.
for what we can do. We're really supposed to just focus on K to 12 education of the students. And that's just the purview that we work in. But I think that it would be a benefit for everybody if families were included in more education and bringing them up to speed on what's going on inside the public classroom because it's amazing, let me tell you. I told you about my math experience, but I had one teacher and she said, you go right ahead and do this project the way it works for you. And so I was actually taking a 3D modeling class at the time, and I mixed my math with my 3D modeling class. And I also then made a art class. So I made this three kind of combo where it was art, math, and 3D modeling. So I made a bus stop. Like I designed
Okay.
my own bus stop, and I made it all, and I ended up bringing the project to all three teachers, and
Mhm.
all three of them gave me an A,
Yeah.
including math.
Mhm.
And what that's now called is a deep dive.
Okay.
And so schools have this new way of teaching where for some kids, if it works for them, then this is where they can go and learn. And for some kids, if the traditional way is, then there's opportunities for them to learn the traditional way as well. So it's like you want to learn about math, you pick a way that works for you. If you want to make an art class, if you want to make an art piece, if you want to make a story, if you want to make anything you like in your passion, it will help you learn better because it's according to your passions and your what you do best, what you enjoy.
Yeah.
And that major shift has been so important so that more kids have access to learning the way that works for them.
Yeah.
And yeah, just seeing that in class, I can understand why people will be like, I don't understand what's supposed to be learning math. Why is my kid drawing something?
Yeah.
You know? And at the end of the day, your kid is going to be thriving in who they are,
Mhm.
and they'll have the education that they need.
Mhm.
But if you don't get explained that, if you don't
Yeah.
understand
You would
why we
never
got rid of grades, if you don't understand that, you're just gonna go, what is happening to school?
Yeah. No,
So
totally.
yeah.
Totally. I love that compassionate approach. And I think it's actually groundbreaking that we are finally moving into a space where the schooling is going to accommodate to the kids because even when I was growing up, I was born in 2002, so I don't even know which years I would have been in elementary, but it was very everyone followed the exact same thing. If you happen to learn a different way, maybe you would apply for an EA and you would kind of do your own thing all by yourself, and everyone else would be doing the exact same thing. I love the idea that this is going to foster individuality and help people, really come into terms with who they are and, build their personalities. I think that is absolutely fantastic that that is something that is becoming more prominent in schooling today.
Yeah, and I know how it's becoming more and more individual and reflective of each individual, which is really hard for a structured institution that's based
Mm,
on a different way of teaching and learning. So
yeah.
we've got these old school buildings and these old classroom, I shouldn't say old, but the way in which they're built are based on a long term, like a long history.
Yeah.
So they're not really reflective of the way we see learning and human
Now.
nature now. So we're really in a lot of pain points
Yeah.
where our communities are growing, our concepts of education is growing, but we're stuck in this process of having to wait for the ministry to approve funding our expansions and our new classes um, and it's just a process. So when things seem like why is this happening, but also this happening, and why isn't it happening fast enough? And it's all just part of the process. Unfortunately, it's
Mm,
a little slow, and I get frustrated a lot,
yeah.
not seeing things move fast enough for the progress that we think we need. But then sometimes people are frustrated at how fast things have moved
Yeah.
for them.
Hmm.
So we're at this really tension point between people are like, we need more change faster, and people are like, slow
We
down.
gotta slow down.
I
Yeah.
gotta, I need to keep up. And we don't have enough money and resources for either thing.
No.
So it really requires us all to have a lot of patience and grace and understanding and recognizing the human nature of the system.
No, totally. And that's just another testament to show how different we all are. So I can totally see how, confusing that may be from both sides of frustration, but I'm glad that it is moving forward because, our society should move with us and we can't stay in the past forever.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's changing and diversifying, and more people are coming, and they need space and they need respect, and so that just changes how we operate.
exactly. So I think this brings us to a great point for a halftime in our episode. And, we brainstormed and we originally met that we wanted to do a game that kind of showed our commonalities between people and that you can't really put a person in a box based on gender, race, culture, anything like that. So this is Who Is That, presented by LC, and I think it's going to um, just give us some perspective to, how common we all really are. So
I'm so excited.
yeah, I had a lot of fun putting this together. Uh,
Good.
I'm gonna show you and the audience a zoomed in uh little segment from a picture, and I want you to tell me what kind of person is gonna come to your mind, and then I'm gonna show you the reveal afterwards, okay?
Sounds good.
So we got some facial hair, some lips, and the bottom of a nose.
Should I guess?
Yeah, sure, let's hear it.
I don't think I couldn't tell you.
Exactly. And look at this beautiful girl.
Oh, look at those freckles.
And she's gorgeous. Those eyebrows, people would kill for eyebrows like that. And
Yeah.
she happens to have darker hair above her lip. Um, but that doesn't change anything about who she is as a person.
Was that
And
what you expected?
no,
Mm,
well, definitely not, but look how gorgeous she is. So
gorgeous.
yeah, that is, something that people get bogged down in, facial hair only belonging to a certain type of person, which isn't true. We're fully covered in hair, and if you believe in the evolution theory, we came from monkeys who are completely covered in hair. So, um, I feel like
I
that
mean,
just a little
I've
perspective.
seen many, many humans who still have lots and lots and lots of hair all over, and it doesn't matter their gender.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I've seen lots of people who don't have any.
I'm one of the hairless variety, honestly, except for on my head. All right. So now we've got like, I feel like this could be an ear model that's such a perfect ear.
Look at that
What
diamond stud.
do you got gems like that in? I currently have just
Nah,
one.
I mean, how can you tell someone's gender by an ear?
Exactly. And this was a little clip taken from a male model for like a J. Crew ad. And I just thought he had a beautiful side profile, and I feel like he totally could be an earring model for any brand out there.
Yeah, and it's funny because we often say, oh, you have girl hands, or you've got, you know, man hands, or you've got something. We tend to also do it to ourselves. Like I thought for the longest time, when I had dysphoria, um, when it was at my height, I was like, my ankles are feminine, which
What does
the
that even mean? Yeah.
yeah, is that a feminine ear? Like
Yeah.
that's just not, it's not a thing.
hmm Exactly. And people just look completely different. Like we are all so individual. There is no way that you'd be able to tell who any certain body part belongs to because people are so different. All right, here is our last one. We got a pair of legs and some Converse.
I always say drag queens have some of the best legs.
Oh, exactly. Exactly.
All I
Um,
know is this person has, yeah, I was gonna say this person works out.
no, exactly. And you see, while we were talking about hair earlier, he has absolutely hairless legs. But obviously he's very fit. He's currently doing a muscle up, which is insane. And has, a very strong physique. And you wouldn't be able to tell what type of person he was just by looking at a tiny snapshot of his legs.
And if that is the last one,
hmm
it's important too to note that they're all fair-skinned for the
hmm
most part. And when you look across different different types of hair or skin, or the way that our hair grows on our head versus our face versus our bodies, it's just completely different no matter
Yeah.
who you are. There's no two who are the same all the way around.
hmm
There's no way to define hard line where this is what a man's hand looks like and this is what I want across the board universally.
Yeah.
There's no universal standard
hmm
for human, you know, it's we call it gender and sex are separate.
Yeah.
Um, so we tend to call things like once you've hit puberty and you start to grow hair and you start to grow hips and your fat starts to place itself in certain places,
Yeah.
and you go through that puberty stage. Um, everybody's that just is different for every single person.
hmm
And whether or not your sex manifests itself the way you think it should according to society's standards, it is all made up in
Yeah.
our collective minds. It's called a
Yeah.
social construct.
Yeah.
So I think this is just a great example of how we try to define things. We
Yeah.
love to do that. We love to make it clear. That's just, again, part of our human nature. We want it
Yeah.
to be clear and defined. But that is actually doing us a major disservice
hmm
because it just actually casts onto ourselves,
Yeah.
pain and torture and dysphoria and dysmorphia and toxic body image. And, the first person you showed, a lot of people are like, wow, they should maybe wax or shave or something because women aren't supposed to look that way. But
And why
that
should
if that person was a woman, then therefore she looks like a woman because that's what she looks like.
yeah.
And we don't, when we stop prescribing to each other that this is what you should look like according to what I say, because this is my belief, we
Yeah.
give each other that freedom to love ourselves.
Mm,
And man, I highly recommend loving yourself.
Yeah. Think of all the disservice, we are doing to ourselves and to our community by shutting out the beauty of others just because they don't fit some ridiculous standard that really doesn't exist. There is no
Yeah.
actual standard for what anyone should or should not look like. We just are as we are. And that is something that we need to, try to destabilize these, constructs.
Yeah. And I love to look at the opposite ends of our life, um, where you're a baby and when you're, an elderly senior,
Yeah.
um, there's really very little difference between human beings when you're at those stages.
Yeah.
Um, there are some visual manifestations that, you could see, hair color, skin color, eye color, things like that, that don't change over time. But the rest, you're not the same person, even yourself, your whole entire life, you change.
Yeah.
So to hold yourself to a standard, to always be a way you think you should be like that, I can't imagine um, the pain when you don't feel good enough or you don't feel like you are who you are supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't make this up, but it's a you shouldn't should on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful when you use the word should. So I should lose weight. I should have, facial hair. I should have be, ripped.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm not going to be man enough. Um, that is an incredible amount of pain.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say I am who I am, therefore I am enough,
Yeah.
that leads to a beautiful flourishing of who you are inside. And when you have, courage and you have self-love and you have the ability to go out in the world and say, I am trans and I am happy,
Yeah.
you give each other the space to continue to love. And it's healing. And this world needs healing.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And while we were on this subject of how we're trying to destabilize some standards, I think history plays an amazing um, role in showing that things haven't always been so cut and dry like they have been over time. So I wanted to touch a little bit on some of these gendered type of norms and stories that have existed in the past. And you are a little bit of an expert on these, as we mentioned before. So I wrote down a few things in my research, and I'd like for you to explain how it started out one way and how it has become something completely different. So, could you tell the audience a little bit about the history behind high heels? And now they are usually looked at for predominantly women. So, tell us a little bit about that discrepancy.
Oh, I'm glad you asked. I love high heels because it's such a great example of a documented history of gender social constructs shifting with time, especially within, people with white privilege who are
Hmm.
from European backgrounds. Um, so when high heels first came out, they were for aristocratic men. They were for people who wore the big wigs,
Hmm.
the big fancy clothes, and big old shoes. Oh,
Yeah.
and a little bit of powder on the face as well. And it wasn't always just for looking good. The hair and the powder was actually because people had lice and syphilis. But the high heels and the clothes were for status.
Hmm.
And it was originally King. Well, I shouldn't say originally, but King Louis was one of the more famous high heel wearing royals, and he had red bottom shoes. Now, it is denied by Louis Vuitton that their red bottom shoes are modeled after him, but it does leave one suspicious. But over time, it started with this is what men did, and
Yeah.
then women were like, well, we want that too, and you shouldn't just get to have something for yourselves. And
Yeah.
so slowly into fashion changed where women started wearing high heels as well. And then it became just women who wore high heels, and it was fashion. And then, fashion. So I'm obviously oversimplifying the history of high heels,
Yeah.
but it's a great example of how the gender the things we think of as gender specific, like this is just for men, this is just for women, it is completely changed over time,
Yeah.
starting off one way and moving another. Another great example of this is the color pink and blue.
Hmm.
So World War, I want to say one, but I'm not sure which one
I'm
exactly.
getting a feeling for World War One as well.
Yeah, okay, we'll say one. Fact checkers, let us know in the comments. Um, Originally, all babies were kind of put in white because infant mortality was a lot higher back then. Also, white was christening gowns, and all babies wore gowns and dresses until they were old enough to walk. But originally, boys wore pink because it was seen as light red, and red was a masculine color. And girls wore blue because it was a reflection of the Virgin Mary, who was seen wearing blue
Mhm.
in a lot of depictions. So people saw blue as light blue as innocent, and you know associated with Mary, and so it was blue for. There's even printed articles that say, strong boys wear pink,
Yeah.
and you see. So again, it's a documented history of that shift of social constructs when we're so rigid. We're so
Yeah.
rigid that we put our kids in pink to make sure they know they're girls. If you did that 100 whatever years ago, they would think there was a boy.
Yeah.
So that's just more evidence of how um, we prescribe gender in accordance to our society, and it's not the other way around, where the innate biological pieces of us create our gender. Like there's a connection. So like for me, my gender identity and my expression is innate. It's something that feels authentic to me,
Yeah.
but it's not me saying to the world, this is what I think a man should look like or be like. It's me saying this is who I am and this is my gender expression. They don't have to match according to society. There
Yeah.
are tons of people out there who identify as male, who go by he, him, and they present themselves in a feminine way all the time or some of the time, depending
Mhm.
on what they feel.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is because their gender expression is that way. That doesn't change the fact that they identify how they identify. And
Hmm.
that's innate to them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is such an interesting topic because we really don't have much perspective other than what we are currently living in. So seeing that complete shift from history to what it is now, that's fascinating to me. I'm wondering what factors played into the roles of how this came to be and how we have come to be so strict in our minds as a society for this is for that and this is for this. So I think that is super, super interesting.
Yeah, I love to look back at history to get a sense of understanding of why things are the way they are now. It really helps me gain a lot of perspective. And I highly recommend anybody, if you're curious why things are the way they are, do some history reading and figuring out the things that got us to where we are, because it helps you understand that they don't have to always be this way. They haven't always been this way, and they will not always be this way. So
Yeah.
how can you now just make change the way you want to by being your best self, being your authentic self? Because you don't, lots of people out there who are not safe where they're living. They don't have the autonomy or say rainbows every day, be themselves. There could be a lot of safety issues for them. But if you're safe to, if you can, if you're available to, I recommend just being yourself whenever possible because you will change the world around you when you do that.
Yeah.
Makes a very big difference, especially to anyone younger than you, but also to people older than you.
Yeah.
They can be a little prickly.
Mhm.
Anybody older than you might question why you're doing what you're doing, and they might not understand it. But you're still making a difference when you're
Yeah.
yourself.
And those thoughts, especially within older people, didn't just come from anywhere. It happened from the environment around them that, made them believe that way. And then over time, it is just harder to change something you've come to know your whole life. And it's like, I imagine how shocking it would be to, um, have been born in like the 40s and you grow up and you're living in like really the future and things are completely different, so I feel like that is a really important um point because we have to have compassion and empathy for them too, even if they
Yeah.
are prickly and may not agree with us. You have to show them that it's okay, but you also have to educate them and give them a safe space for learning about the new world that they're living in.
Yeah. Everybody needs a mentor, a guide, an educator, someone to care about them enough to sit down and say, let's talk about this.
Mm.
Let's come to that agreement. Let's see where your pain points are and see if I can do anything to alleviate that. Because I'm not like the youngest anymore. I'm approaching 37.
You don't look
And
a day
I
over
know
30. Baby face for
it's my
sure.
secret weapon. But I noticed a shift in the next generation that's come out and how different they operate and how different they think. And I myself want to embrace those differences and understand what the future will hold for them so I can serve the future. But I
Yeah.
also completely understand quite like saying, well, this didn't work. That didn't work for me. You should be careful. I went through that and I suffered. So, I'm going to warn you.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find that mutual respect of saying, this is my lived experience and I want you to know it. But it was also my lived experience during the time that I was alive. And
Hmm.
this is a different time. And so it's important we have those conversations and build bridges and understanding, but we're not trying to prescribe, tell each other how to live, tell each other like, well, this worked for me, so you have to do it this way. Um, so it's important that to just continue to have those conversations, build bridges, have empathy and understanding and grace when you can.
Hmm.
I've been through some pretty big turmoil with some of the pushback that I've gotten in my community, and it's very draining, very emotionally exhausting, and I'm sometimes very mentally unwell to manage those kind of conversations. So I totally understand saying like, sorry, I'm just not the person to have those conversations with you. I love you, but I'm gonna have to keep my distance from you until you've grown or changed in some way. I
Yeah.
love you, but it can't be me.
Mhm.
And I totally respect that. And that's okay. A lot of us carry a ton of shame and guilt for not putting effort and time into people that hurt us, that
Yeah.
make us compartmentalize ourselves or put ourselves away. And that pain of putting ourselves away is too great sometimes to bear when your daily is to be vigilant and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So if you're a parent or an adult or a family member who has someone in their life who's queer and they're like, and you're like, I just want them to tell me, I just want them to teach me. Why are they not talking to me? I love them, but I can sometimes misgender them or say harmful things, and now they don't want to be around me, but I love them.
Mhm.
Just understand that that person's going through so much of that that they don't have anything left. They
Mhm.
just want to try to live their lives, go to work, go to school, do what they need to do, have fat like relationships that fill them. And if you are in that position, try to find other people. There's tons of amazing influencers out there who you can follow. Skylar Bayer is one of my favorites, and he's got a whole bunch. El Duran is a new one that I've just recently come across. She's amazing. There are so many great creators out there who are doing educational work that you could scroll through in your evening while you're trying to fall asleep. Just do a little bit of education yourself, trying to grow your perspective and understanding, and do internal work. Because what I find I personally went through something similar to what a lot of people feel where um, they are judging the queer community because they have something going on inside themselves that they haven't accepted.
Yeah.
So before I transitioned, I thought that I had accepted myself as a cisgender person and I didn't have to transition, and I was judging everybody who did.
Mhm.
But I realized I was wrong. I
Yeah.
hadn't accepted myself. I had done the opposite. I rejected myself.
Hmm.
So I understand having one frame of mind and then needing some time and education and growth to accept that I was actually hurting internally and that it
Yeah.
was my own hurt that I had to work through to embrace this way of being.
Yeah.
And that was about me and myself, just about
Mhm.
me. So um, if you're finding that you don't understand why someone is LGBTQ, that you don't understand why they don't want to be around you, um, just know that someone knows themselves better than you will ever know them,
Yeah.
and that you don't have to understand necessarily to respect it. But if
Yeah.
you want to try growing your perspective, following other influencers, doing research, that's going to get you a really long way.
Yeah. And people are going to appreciate your even openness to try, because that is all people really want to, feel safe, feel loved,
Yeah,
and feel like they have a place in the world. So
yeah. And to know that no matter where they go, they can be them and that they matter.
yeah, completely. So, we have talked a lot about some mentors, educators, how important it is to have someone there that is going to help you along because, it's feels pretty lonely out there no matter what position you're in. And without some sort of guidance that would be difficult. So I'm wondering, who is someone that you have met um, in your experience that you think would be an amazing person to come on the show and would have something really important to say that you think the people would really be impacted from?
Um, One of my recent engagements in the community was with somebody named Stacy Chomiak. She is an author and an illustrator and an artist, and she authored and illustrated her own youth novel called Still Stace, and it's about her experience coming of age as a Christian lesbian and what her experience was in that. And I really love her story because, um, the unique intersection of her identity between being a lesbian and being a woman of faith
Mhm.
makes it that she's isolated in a lot of both of those
Yeah.
circles.
Hmm.
Because a lot of people in the LGBTQ community have been so damaged by people of faith that it's hard to trust anybody who has those beliefs.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in the faith community are taught not to accept LGBTQ people. So knowing that unique um, barriers that she experiences with her identity and her faith really is a really important message for a lot of people to hear and understand because um, you know there's a lot of assumptions that get made, and she
Yeah.
has a really impactful story to share. And she's also an amazing artist, and her novel is stunning. It's done in two colors. It's just done in black and orange, and you would not
Okay.
know it. So she's just an absolutely outstanding artist. She's done animation as well. She's worked on Star Trek and My Little Pony, and
Hmm.
so between her journey on in art and becoming the artist that she is, and then her journey in her personal identity. I just think she's a really wonderful person to be able to speak to and get her perspective.
Yeah, we'll definitely reach out to her. What I've never heard of or met someone who is so involved in their faith and happens to be a lesbian. I feel like that would be such a unique perspective to bring that a lot of people might not have experienced in their lives. And the beauty of writing is something that I relate to so deeply. So I definitely will look into contacting her because I feel like she would be a very inspiring person to have on the show. Um as we bring our episode to a close today, Teri, I wanted to know if you had any further advice for the younger generation or the parents or anybody. What do you think still needs to be said?
Well, um, I think that I would like to leave with the um, the understanding that the public education system is supposed to be the great equalizer, where no matter your background, um, your means, your whatever it is, who you are, where you're coming from, or whatever, you have access to the same opportunities to educate yourself and become a full and complete human.
Hmm.
And not everybody has parents at home, or even if they do, they don't have supportive ones who are educated enough to be able to tell them what it is that they need to know to become a full human. And for that, sometimes I just mean like washing yourself, your body, your hair, your clothes, wearing deodorant, those basic human needs. Sometimes people don't have that at home.
Yeah,
And then sometimes it's the higher level stuff, like understanding how to engage with different people who have different ideas, how
yeah,
to manage your own mental health. When all of that is in a community-based public system that everybody passes through, it gives everybody the chance to thrive,
yeah.
to know what they need to know and become their best self.
Mhm.
That's why the school system is getting fuller and richer and more complex in how it delivers not just education, but not just education in like the academic sense, but a full, thorough education in being human.
Yeah,
And when we have that in a community setting like a school, it really does help everybody get to where they need to go, and it stops the system from perpetuating the, the same issues over and over again.
yeah,
When we have people who are in poverty and they can't come to school because they can't afford a car and there's not enough transportation. And then when they get there, they can't afford to eat. And so that's why we have lunch programs and we have bus programs and we have after school programs so that those kids, those people have what they need always. There's
Yeah.
no gaps in their lives. And I love that we have a system that provides that cares about the whole human, not just for them, but for our society, for our communities. When we have whole humans, we have less poverty, we have less addiction, we have less mental health issues, we have less suicide, we have less pain and suffering, less division. So when we have a beautiful people coming through a system, collaborating, working together, building bridges, understanding, being their best selves, getting what they need, they go off and they flourish and they provide us in the future what we need to survive in a healthy, whole way. And that's why it's super important that we support inclusion in the classroom for every person to succeed at getting their education and becoming their best self.
Yeah, I could never have said something better than that. I think that I am moved. I hope everyone who tuned in today um really engaged with what you were saying in that experience. I feel like your perspective is something that we need more of in the world. And I can feel your open heart and your compassion for all types of people. And that is what we need more of today in our society, because at the end of the day, we're all in the same position. We are all living this life for the first time, trying to find out how we can best live our lives and be the best self that we can be. And I think that your insights on this are really going to help some people out there for sure.
I hope so. And if you are watching, you made it this far, thank you for being here and for listening and having an open heart and an open mind and embracing each other and embracing yourself. I hope that you love yourself and that the love is unconditional.
Yeah. That is one of our bases here at Love Caravan, and that is why it's so important that we are having these conversations and we're trying to destabilize these standards and break down boundaries and build these bridges, like you were saying, because that is how we are going to find our true selves in our community. So,
Yes.
thank you, Teri. Thank you so much to our audience, everyone, for coming and interacting with us today. And I hope you all have a great weekend. Enjoy Pride Month. Get out there, get involved. Best wishes everyone out there. All
Thanks
right,
for doing this.
we'll catch you guys in the next one. All right, are we off the air?
Hey, yes, we got off.
We're good? Okay, perfect, guys.